SuperTalk Mississippi and SuperTalk.fm.
Senator McDaniel, how you doing today? And welcome to the show.
Hey, JT, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Fresh from the governor's desk, the Religious Liberties Act has been signed into law, and now the ACLU is ready to jump on this. Now, Senator McDaniel, when you and I had talked about this a while back, I want you to unpack the Religious Liberties Act for us before we even talk about the ACLU. But you and I had talked, this bill, this isn't something you dreamed up. This isn't something that you just penned all of a sudden and said, boom, we're going to do this. You did your work on this.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. So first, let's unpack the Religious Liberties Act, and then after that, let's talk just a little bit about what this bill could, or this law could be facing.
Well, absolutely. I'd be happy to. And it's actually a complicated law because it has to be. The Supreme Court's made this area a very complex area. But the things that it does are fairly simple, I think. The first thing it does is protect expression. It protects liberty. In other words, it makes sure that government's going to be neutral. If a child perhaps expresses a religious viewpoint or even a religious expression, period, then the government will be neutral to that expression. It can't discriminate based only on that expression. Likewise, if that expression takes place in a classroom assignment, the bill speaks directly to that. For example, if a child wishes to do a report on Jesus or some other historical religious figure, that child can do that without being penalized. Likewise, the organization of groups and activities, all of that is specifically protected in the bill. And the reason that needed to be done, JT, is because there's so much confusion in this area of the law. What was happening that administrators and principals and others were suppressing these activities, not because they were anti-religious, but because they feared retribution. They feared the ACLU or other groups that would come in and threaten them. By providing this clarity, we give them parameters in which to work. And lastly, what it does, and this is the part the ACLU is really concerned about, obviously, is that it creates limited public forums for purposes of the expression. And it allows school districts around the state to do likewise. So, in other words, if these limited public forums are created and a child is able to express himself in these forums, it makes it very clear that the state or the state agency is not directing or compelling or sponsoring the prayer, and it survives constitutional scrutiny because of that. So it's a really good bill. It's been tested in a number of areas already. And I'm looking forward to seeing them come to court. I'm excited about it.
So you're saying basically to the ACLU and Barrett and the rest of them, y'all bring it on. We're ready.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's real simple. Let's dance. Let's do it. At the end of the day, here's what it boils down to. If the ACLU feels like that this bill is invalid or unconstitutional on its face, why wait? Why wait? I'm ready. We're ready to go. Let's go ahead and get to court and let's see what happens. If you win, so be it. But you're not going to win. At the end of the day, they tried this in the 11th Circuit, and they lost. They've tried it in similar cases in the 5th Circuit, and they've lost. They know that. So, look, if they want to try to invalidate this right now, I encourage it. Let's get after it and see what happens.
I want to ask you this question, Senator McDaniel. This has been called the prayer bill. I mean, I know, and it may be kind of mislabeled by saying this was the school prayer bill.
Sure.
This is not going to put school prayer back in school, per se.
Here's what it does. That's right, per se, as a matter of law. That's exactly right. Here's what it does. Prayer, obviously, is protected speech. It's funny how the ACLU always manages to miss the free exercise clause of the Constitution, but they manage to circle the Establishment Clause. Prayer is speech, expression, whatever the case may be. This bill prohibits discrimination based on the expression if it happens. You won't find the word prayer in this bill necessarily. You won't find the word invocation in this prayer necessarily. But if it does happen during the limited public forum setting, it makes it clear the state's not compelling or sponsoring the speech, and consequently, because it makes that clear, the bill is constitutional. And to say otherwise is disingenuous. I've read the Santa Fe case. I've read Lee versus Weissman. I understand what the cases say, and it's very, very clear. As long as we're not compelling the speech, this relentless, all-pervasive attempt to exclude religion is unconstitutional. So the bill is protecting the expression. And if prayer happens to take place as a result of that, then that's the price we pay to live in a free society, isn't it?
Well, I guess you got a good point there. what about football games? Now, will this actually give students, if a group of students decided all of a sudden that they wanted to have a prayer at a high school football game, will they be able to do that now, Senator McDaniel?
Yes, absolutely. And, of course, part of that was already protected constitutionally, but it takes it a step further now. The football case is the Santa Fe case, and the left always points to that, and they circle it, and they say, Santa Fe says you can't pray over a loudspeaker at a football game. That's not what Santa Fe says. Santa Fe is a fact-specific case. And by that I mean it applied only in the context of the Santa Fe decision. It's not the context of the prayer that makes it unconstitutional. It's how the state sponsors the prayer that makes it unconstitutional. And by simply praying over the loudspeaker, that doesn't quite get to the sponsorship aspect, particularly if there's a disclaimer that's read ahead of time. What we're looking at here is this. Santa Fe is a narrow ruling, and they try to apply it across the board as if it's got this broad general application. To answer your question, JT, yeah, you may actually hear some prayer at a football game again. That may happen. And if it does happen, and if it's private student speech, it's our job to protect that speech. It's not the state is not here trying to compel it or to make it happen, but we're darn sure trying to protect it in the event that it could happen. And that's the distinction. That's what makes this bill constitutional.
It's going to be interesting. So what you're saying is if a group of students want to pray before a ball game at a public school, basically the announcer, they could go and say this is what we want to do, and they would obviously the PA announcer would read some type of disclaimer, and the children could do that, I guess. That's
the idea. And here's the way it works. The school could not, they would have to be selected based on some form of neutral criteria, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If they were selected on neutral criteria, if they were given that moment of expression, and it was made perfectly clear that the moment of expression is not being compelled by the state, then it's a constitutionally permissible exercise of speech. And that's what this bill allows. Now, here's something else that concerns me about the critics out there. I keep hearing about how terrible the language is. I keep hearing about how it's unconstitutional. Well, Texas has had something very similar on its books for about 6.5 years. Texas is a state of 26 million people. Thus far, in 6 years, there have been 2 lawsuits filed. And guess what? On one, the ACLU had to settle, and the great majority of the act during the settlement agreement was upheld. Number 2, they lost. They lost. So 26 million people in Texas, massive 2 lawsuits have been filed, and each time the ACLU come up short. So let's do this. If you want to come on, let's get it done. We're ready. We're willing to fight.
I like the way you're talking, man. That's awesome right there. I like what I'm hearing, that's for sure, as we continue to follow this. Senator Chris McDaniel, appreciate you. We'll be seeing you soon down in Laurel, and looking forward to it, okay, my friend?
Sounds great, guys. Y'all take care.
Thank you. That dude is going to be a statewide elected official one day. Mark my word on it. He may be one of the smartest guys in the Capitol. SuperTalk Mississippi, the JT Show.
SuperTalk Mississippi and SuperTalk.fm.